Memphis is the home of the blues, rock and roll, and Earle Farrell.
From the Collierville Square to the mighty Mississippi, the Earle Farrell for Memphis show is all about good things that happen across the Bluff City and the people who make Memphis cool.
The Earle Farrell for Memphis show is made possible by our title sponsor, Southern Security Federal Credit Union, and by Kathy Thurman Edwards, State Farm Insurance.
Plus, Diane Kimbrough, Lady Di, your insurance PI. Also by Dive Shop and Dive Ventures nationwide. Jim Karras Chevrolet with George Gully. Napa Cafe Memphis and Glenda Hastings. Phoenix Unequaled Home Entertainment. For Memphis Magazine. The Live at the Garden Concert Series. And the Orpheum Theater Group Memphis. Thank you to all the sponsors for making this possible.
And now, coming to you from Lansky Brothers, Clothier to the King, inside the world-famous Peabody Hotel, with the heart of a cowboy and Memphis in his soul. Ladies and gentlemen, here's your host, Earle Farrell.
And thank you very much, and welcome into Lansky's at the world-famous Peabody Hotel. And today, my guest is on the cover of this book, which he just wrote. It is his inaugural book. Jeff Berry is from Mississippi, and he's writing about Mississippi. And I love the title because we get to say, go to hell, Ole Miss, as many times as we talk about the book. Because my kids went to Mississippi State, and that's part of the whole story here. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
What I immediately liked about you, and I kind of got it from just the pictures I'd seen of you holding up your book. It's like in the movie True Grit, where John Wayne's talking about Kim Darby's character. She's swimming across this river when they tried to lose her, and he goes, "By God, she reminds me of me." And that's kind of the way I feel about you.
That. Well, thank you. I take that as a compliment. I appreciate that.
This is your first book, and it's often been said by many people that everybody has a book in them. Is that the way you always felt, that there was a book in there?
I guess to a little bit, to extent. I've always written, and since I was a kid, but it was privately, and then I just started writing, a little bit more publicly. I've got a story about a penguin here, a Mexican rancher named Penguin, where I got my start at age 13 in writing. It was great with my dad and his World War II buddies down this ranch, but that's where I started writing. My dad had me write up the story, and then I've pretty much written, wrote privately most of my life, and then started a blog in my, midlife and 40s, and then the idea, people say I'll write a book, and then the idea of the book and the plot and kind of storyline came to me. So that's kind of where it's gone.
I erroneously said you're from Mississippi. You're from Memphis, but you spent a lot of time in Mississippi, got a lot of family.
Most of my family's from Mississippi, the hill country, kind of around where this book's set.
Because I've interviewed a lot of authors, and it's always write about something you know, so you've done that. Then also the characters are people you knew and have known during your life. But then you start narrowing it down, because my biggest fear is you start telling stories about you, or you're in this tale you're telling. But if you reveal stories, everybody knows where the stories came from, you. And so you sit there and go, do I want to tell this story? Are there parts of this that, is going to be too revealing about me? So when you embarked on this, what was the one story? Was it Go to Hell, Ole Miss, this story that goes way back to World War II? Then you built the rest of the book from the title.
Yeah, it was. So my dad was kind of an inspiration for my writing. He was an old World War II veteran, POW. He's a B-24 pilot, shot down over Germany, and the title actually comes from his first night in captivity. It's a crazy story. It was his favorite war story. And he was married to my mom, my future mom, who was living on the Ole Miss campus at the time in a sorority house. And so it was a story that actually gave him a lot of hope and kind of a redemptive story. He ended up being a POW for 13 months, basically until the war ended. And it was. The book is not about Ole Miss, but it is set near there, and it's an integral part of my dad's story, who inspired my writing, and also the main character. I incorporate that into the main character. So,
which is Big John.
Big John, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
what was the impetus to finally sit down and do it? I mean, you've written other things. You had the blog. Was there something that happened that you said, I got to do this?
There was. I was in Holly Springs, Mississippi, which is basically where the book is set. I call it Hope Springs because I wanted a little license to change up a few things if I wanted to, and then also kind of that shows some of the part of the theme of hope amidst hardship in the book. And I was there. I was dealing with, actually, it was a tract of land that Bell's owned, who owns this hotel. There's so much history from our family and personally and in the book, the Peabody, but I was at the corner, one of these corners of the town square, and it just, when it hit, I was waiting on the light to change, and it hit, and that's when I started. It was about a father. You know, I had 2 young daughters, and it was kind of like, would be one of my worst nightmares, and it was about if they got in a really tough situation where I couldn't really help them, and I'd also help put them there. That's kind of the storyline where that came from.
And as it develops, and I'm not going to give away the whole book because that's why you got to buy the book and read it.
That's right, yep.
But it is dealing with a daughter who they're trying to figure out, you know, every dad wants to think they can pick out the best husband for their daughter, and the same thing with their sons,
yep.
which I've been accused of myself. But then as it goes on, something happens with the daughter that I would find very difficult not to handle myself. And but this guy, and it's probably because of his background during World War II, that you have to endure things. There's nothing you can do about it, and you just have to endure it, which is, I think, the logical thing to do. But oftentimes, that's not what I do. Is it what you would do? I mean, is it hard to write against your own instincts?
Yeah, it definitely was, and this the main character, the father in this story, is he's World War II veteran, like I said, but he's kind of a gentle giant and a tender heart, you know, and so, you know, he's got the crooked sheriff who won't do anything because he's kind of in the pocket of the bad guy, and so without giving it away, I'll just say that there was this tension going throughout the book of his nature versus trying to protect his daughter. And so I was having to hold back with him, and then but the situation does kind of get resolved and in a little bit on orthodox way, and so I was able to express kind of what I would have wanted to do. I'll just say that through the way it was ended.
Also talk about racial healing is in the book. It's really a little bit about everything. There's you know, romance. There's defending your family. There's loyalty. There's bad guys. I know when I first came to Memphis in 1978, they told me to grab a photographer, go to Holly Springs. There was going to be a Klan march and protest in the town square.
Wow.
And, you know, 1978 is not that far from 1968. And I looked around, and I'd come from Texas, and so we hadn't seen any of the strife that was in the South. And so, but I remember watching the CBS Evening News, Walter Cronkite, going, what is going on down there? Then you get here, and they go, there's a Klan's gathering in Holly Springs. Get a live truck and grab a photographer and go down there. And so I looked around the room, there's like 4 or 5 black photographers. I said, who's going with me? And nobody raised their hand. And that's when I first realized that the fear was still there, and that the Klan was still there. I was amazed that was happening.
Yep.
Nothing ended up happening. We went, and there was a black photographer with me. I said, let's go. And but I realized then that it ain't the same thing for a white guy saying, let's go to Holly Springs to see the Klan as it is for a black guy to do that.
Wow.
And even now, writing about it, you just must have had trepidation about how will this be interpreted? How will this be interpreted?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the book is set in 1970, and that's kind of one of the reasons I set it there. One, I wanted to be able to, the main character to be of an age that I could incorporate a lot of World War II kind of unique stories I was with, but also to deal with that. And I also wanted to show, you know, the South gets branded, and rightfully so much of the time, for its, you know, racism. But I've also seen, and as a matter of fact, one of the stories pretty early in the book that's pretty dramatic about a guy getting tied to the fuel tank by the sheriff and his deputies. He's a black man, and the main character comes out. That was based on a true story. I mean, I just changed up the names basically, but I wanted to also show the other side, which is some real dear, loving relationships between the races, which we have here too. And so I didn't want to just show one side or the other. I wanted to try to show both as best I could.
Because both existed.
Right.
And anybody that has lived in Memphis, and I've been here almost 50 years, some of my best friends I met in broadcasting and just covering the news, and not all of them were white, not all of them were black, but you really don't see color. It's an amazing thing. Everybody says, well, you see the color, don't you? I said, it's like somebody you meet, you become friends with. Maybe they're overweight. You first meet them and you noticed it then. But the longer you know them, the less you notice anything negative about them. They're just who they are. And I think that's the way most people feel about the other races that they come in contact through life. They just become people.
Yep.
Good point. A lot of things that are in the book are real places. You talk about the Peabody Hotel that the main character came here on his honeymoon. Is that?
And that's based on a true story too. My mom and dad got married in the throes of World War II. They had a one-night honeymoon, and they had it here. And so that there's 3 honeymoons, I guess, to my life. So 2 of the honeymoons in the book. The main character and his wife's honeymoon was here, and then his daughter, and her husband on their first night. And but there's a particular scene that was, I thought, kind of funny when my dad and mom, again, it was a quick wedding, right? And he had to go overseas to war real soon after that, and they're going up the elevator. They just come from their wedding. This truce in the elevator here, the Peabody, and back then everything was real, prim and proper, so to speak, about the sexes. You weren't to be seen on an elevator in a hotel unless you were, with an opposite sex, unless you were married. And my mom and dad were going up they were about to they went up there, they got on the elevator, the doors were about to close, these 2 ladies come in, and they knew them a little bit, and they were kind of known as real prudish type, judgmental ladies, and they were looking at them, and my mom's face was turning red, and then my dad's too, and he took his hat off, his military hat, to be a gentleman and say hello. And when he did the rice, I guess he hadn't had his hat on at the wedding going out. The rice all fell out, and then everything was okay, and my mom. And then they got up to the bedroom, and they had 2 small single beds in the bedroom. And my dad, these are both in the book, but my dad, he called down there and he said, "This is Lieutenant Colonel Warren Berry, and Lieutenant Colonel Warren Berry is not going to spend the first night of his honeymoon in a room with 2 single beds. Y'all get up here with a bigger bed." And my mom sat in the corner, so embarrassed. They brought up another bed and all that. So those are all true stories. There's quite a few references to the Peabody in the book.
And then just down the alley from us, even today, the Rendezvous.
Right. That's right. That's right. It's in a scene too, as well. It's mentioned a couple times. And so, yeah.
The Rendezvous and the Peabody, probably 2 of the most iconic places in downtown Memphis throughout history.
Right.
The Burgos family, and just walking into the Rendezvous. And the great thing about the Peabody, it looks exactly the same as it did when the Bells family reopened it almost 50 years ago. And the Peabody and the Rendezvous, you walk into that place, and now some people will say the ribs they got last night were made 50 years ago, but that's one of the charms of the Rendezvous. You never know if you're going to get a fresh rib rack or one that's been around for a while. But it's even the Burgos family will tell you, may not be the best barbecue in town, but it is the most interesting place you'll ever eat barbecue in, and that's certainly true.
Definitely.
Was it even difficult at even that of deciding what iconic places you wanted to put in the book?
A little bit. I guess I drew on, personal and family or whatever history that I'd had. I wrote a good bit of this book, most of it outside. I can't be in a quiet room. I need some background noise, and it kind of helps me hyper-focus, and I like to get up and move around when I get antsy, and so I wrote a good bit of it at the park there at Harbortown, and then at Tom Lee Park. And so that the Tom Lee Park plays a pretty big scene and there in the obelisk that was there, and go over what a hero Tom Lee was and how that tied into what you were mentioning earlier about the history of racism, but then also the history of love between the races. And I actually used that to try to bring both of those into the story as well. But yeah, that's kind of, I guess, how. And then there's one scene I grew up on Peabody Avenue here in Midtown, and so my parents lived there for 50-something years. And there's a scene where the daughter who's kind of flees to Memphis to get away, and she ends up in the back house of a house off of Peabody Avenue. And that was the one time I actually put, pretty direct family, my mom and dad into that scene. It's not a quote autobiographical novel, but there's a lot of personal history I thought that fit the scene that I put in there.
You lived right around the corner from where Machine Gun Kelly grew up, over on I think it was Linden, maybe.
Wow, I did not realize that.
Do you know Ace Atkins?
Yeah.
And he wrote the book, Machine Gun Kelly, and I interviewed him in front of the house, and that said that Kelly, who went to East High and was known mainly in high school for bootlegging booze back in the day. And then he met this woman who led him astray and got him into bank robbery, and dubbed him Machine Gun Kelly when she actually bought the machine gun. Very interesting story.
That is interesting.
But right around
I didn't realize that.
Right around the corner from you. You were talking about writing at Tom Lee and on Mud Island. Do you use a typewriter? Do you write longhand just whenever you get the urge? Do you use a laptop?
Yeah, I would always pretty much write the first draft longhand, and I would carry. I'd be wherever, generally outside, and sometimes I have a bunch of little reporters' notebooks you can carry, and I would sometimes be hiking down a trail and literally be writing and hiking and stopping and writing and hiking. And then I would enter the draft after I'd written it into the laptop, and then edit it, rewrite it from there.
No, I just meant your wife. Does she look at everything as you are in the writing process, or does she ever get to look at it, or do you deal mainly with editors?
So yeah, she didn't really want to look at it during those phases. No, I'm kidding. She would have. I don't know. I didn't really want to. I had some friends and readers, kind of beta readers, avid fiction readers. I wanted to kind of save it till it was done to let my wife read it. One of those is Shay Fox right here. She's an avid fiction reader who gave me an edit. I was looking for structural edits, and then I ended up hiring several Big Five publishing house editors to edit from a structural standpoint. That was one of my challenges, or my main challenge as a first-time author. I feel like I never had copy edits or the voice. I feel like I had the people and the stories and the writing, but the structure of the plot and how to pace it, something I really had to work on a lot. So I had editors help me with that a lot.
Because it really is like a puzzle. I mean, it takes you down this road, but then you have to include and keep moving all the plot forward without forgetting some element of it. And then did you have a narrative voice in your head as you're writing this?
Yeah, I grew up around so many, like we were talking about, Southern storytellers, and in both black and white. And so I when I was writing, I have two narrators, really three. The main character, who's a middle-aged Southern man, a young boy who's his nephew, who's 15, and then a black lady who's middle-aged. And so when I was writing in one of those voices, I would just totally try to immerse myself in that world, and I wouldn't write the other voice. And so my youngest daughter, she was about 10 at the time, she caught me I would literally be talking to myself or talking to these characters. They truly kind of became people to me, which is one of my goals with the book. And she'd come in, she's like, "Dad, these aren't real people. Quit talking to them." And I'm like, she might have to be in therapy now or later on dealing with her dad talking to these imaginary characters. But I would, very much try to immerse myself in the world and in the voice of whatever character I was writing at the time, and not mix them up. And then when I was done with that and moved to the next one, kind of get in that mode.
Dialect, which is, I think, so important to the believability of any novel. We were talking before the show about Lonesome Dove, probably my favorite book, favorite TV series, and that was what sold me on Lonesome Dove. The very first paragraph where he's kicking the snake off the front porch and kicking the pigs and go on, get out of here.
Yep.
I mean, because it just rang so true to what I grew up here, the way I heard people talk, how they reference things, and the almost nonstop joshing and that guys do in their own worlds. You know, you never give somebody a compliment. It's always
right.
something about their personality, or their
Yep.
work ethic, or their morality that always would pop up. When you're writing this and you're thinking back to your own history, because there's so much tradition here that you were dealing with, and I think it was brilliant going back to the 70s, because things, even though a lot of people think it has not changed, so much has changed since the 70s about perception, reality, how people are treated, and I think oftentimes people forget how much things have changed.
Yeah, you're right. And as far as the writing, I just tried to write how I've heard people talk, and as much as I could. And I actually toned some of that down, because if you truly write how Southerners, regardless of their race or gender or whatever, how they really talk, it's kind of like reading Faulkner a little bit. It's like you almost need matter of fact, my first draft, one of the authors that read it, Jamie Cornegie, who's a great Southern author, and he was like, man, I almost feel like I need a dictionary to read this. And so I toned it down a lot as far as the dialect, but I tried to keep as much as I could to make it, real and authentic. And so that was part of the dialogue. I love the dialogue. It's very dialogue-heavy book. And that was part of the joy of writing it, trying to capture that.
The title, Go to Hell, Ole Miss, when you first met with your editors, I know there were a number of them, but did anybody go, do you think you want to go there?
Pretty much everybody tried to get me to change the title.
So you knew you were on the right track.
Matter of fact, but one of the authors who endorsed this book, Hampton Sides, who's a New York Times multiple best-selling author, and he was like, "Man, I love that title. You keep that title." And I was going to keep. I was like, "Man, I appreciate that confirmation." But yeah, a lot of people were, and most of I have an extra ground with Ole Miss. I almost went there as my second choice. Most of my family and a lot of my friends went there, but it really was part of the inspiration of the book from my dad and his personal history and all of that, and so that's what we went with.
As I said, I don't want to give away the book, but I think people would like to know, or do you want them to find on their own exactly where the term came from?
Yeah, I'll give a little hint. The whole story, which was my dad's story. He was a B-24 pilot in World War II, shot down over Germany. He was by himself because he'd had the rest of his crew bail out miles and miles before. He was captured and he was thrown in a shed.
Him and his co-pilot stayed in the cockpit, or just
No,
him?
everybody bailed out except for him because he was
Wow.
trying to hold the plane steady. And then he was going to try to make it all the way back to England, where they were. He flew out of the 8th Air Force in northern England. He was going to try to make it back there. And then as the plane, he had 2 engines on fire. It was a 4-engine bomber. And as the plane, then he's got 2 engines on fire, and he's going by himself. The plane's dropping, and he realizes it's about the last minute that he's got. And so anyway, he bailed out. He ends up there by himself. He was married at the time married to my future mom, who was a Ole Miss girl living on the Ole Miss campus, 20 years old. He was 23. And so that's the story, true story, which is what the title is based on, comes from his first night in captivity, all alone in a shed, like kind of the one on the cover there.
And my uncle's also shot down over Germany and was a prisoner of war. He was a B-25 pilot. And they all bailed out about the same time, and he hurt his back and suffered through the rest of his life from the injuries.
Wow.
He also never ate much the rest of his life. He ate beef broth every day at lunch with nothing in it. And I said, why would you eat that when you went through starvation in the prisoner of war camps? He goes, I don't know. He said you get used to eating light, and it kind of kept me grounded. If I had something to eat, and beef broth was as close to what he was eating over there as anything else. But truly the greatest generation of all those people. The name also, I think, did as much to make people buy the book as anything else. They want to know, why are you telling Ole Miss people to go to hell? Which is kind of brilliant. There are people that hate Ole Miss going to buy the book. People that love Ole Miss going to buy the book. So it's both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I think it hit top 20 USA Today bestseller pretty quickly, and it's hit Barnes & Noble bestseller and Amazon, and a lot of the local bookstores, and I think that's helped. I had one of my favorite quick story on that. We were doing a signing at a Barnes & Noble in Tupelo, and this guy comes in, and he didn't look like he'd been in a bookstore in a long time, just like I don't often. And he's like,
we can be spotted? Is that what you're saying?
he said, he comes in, he goes, I don't go to bookstores or libraries. I don't read books, but I want 5 of them. I'm like, well, why do you want 5? He goes, I'm going to give them to all my Ole Miss buddies. Tell them to go to hell.
And exactly what I'm telling you.
And we went out and got a picture. He goes, my license plate, my rear license plate has GTHOM. Go to hell, Ole Miss one. We went out and got pictures there. Anyway,
Wow.
So it kind of goes both ways.
We've got some time left. Would you like to read a couple of
Sure.
paragraphs of your favorite things you think would illustrate the novel?
Sure. We've already talked about the title a little bit, so I will read, let's see here. Yeah, I'll read a little excerpt that's towards the end of the book. This actually comes directly from history. It's kind of a historical / literary fiction novel. And so we were actually on a family trip about 10 years ago over in Germany, and we went to the Dachau concentration camp outside of Munich. And I'd always wondered how Hitler, you see how a crazy guy can come to power, but how do you have so many people follow him?
Yeah.
And we're standing there reading from the main monument at the entrance, and that's where it hit me, which ended up going into this scene because this is a World War II veteran. And the kid, I kind of put myself in the kid's place, like how do you get that far? So anyway, this is directly from basically that monument and that history there. And this is in the voice of Slide, who's the nephew of the main character, Big John. And so Big John and Daddy and Slide, and then Daddy, like we talked about. So
D-I-D-D-Y.
Sunday dinner opened with a thud when Mama burned the cornbread and concocted a new way of making fried chicken taste like cough medicine. Big John and Daddy took turns stomping on the 9th commandment that made a big to-do over lying. One brother would swallow hard and declare how delicious everything was, while the other surely dreamed of Shine's Sunday dinners. That was Big John's wife, who's no longer around. I kept my trap shut until the store-bought vanilla ice cream hit the table. Thanks a bunch, Mama, I said. This will make up for... Her eyes said it was time for my own Whopper. Oh, it was great, Mama, all great. And what was your favorite, she asked. Your turnip greens, I said. That's news to me, she said, a teenager who likes turnip greens. Little luck with truth and less with lies, I decided to change the subject. Big John, you're not too old to remember our talk on Miles and Hitler the other day. He's another character in the book, I said. Miles only had to con us. How did Hitler get a whole country to tag along? Big John pushed back from the table, stretched his legs, and studied the zipper boots that might have been in style when General Grant was smoking cigars and sipping whiskey at the old homestead. Slide, you remember me talking about Albert Brown, I suppose. Not in the last hour, I said. Albert Brown, that was the camp genius with my dad in POW camp. So this is, I kind of tied that in here too. Anyway, Albert called it the Devil's Troika. Don't ask me why he didn't call it a pitchfork with 3 prongs. The scoundrel had a ball throwing big ideas and newfangled words our way. There's a Yankee for you, Mama said. Troy, what? I asked. Big John grinned, showing specks of cornbread that looked white next to his teeth. Start with Troy and add the last part of Becca's name. The grown-ups chuckled. I deserved to finish every play at the table for mentioning a girl at school who didn't know my name. Slide, should we tell your folks about the little redhead you're sweet on? I'd rather discuss the Devil's Troika. Big John stared out the window. Albert said it amounted to 3 hooks, prongs, if you will. Hitler used to gain power and carry out his evil over the years. Nationalism, populism, and sectarianism. Hitler promised to make Germany great again, get the working man back on his feet, and get rid of the Jews. He blamed them for the common man's problems. What's wrong with those first 2? You're patriotic as they come, Big John, and you drove an 18-wheeler for 25 years. Sounds plenty common to me. Albert went into that too. How it's good to be proud of your country and look out for the working man, but when you add that ism to the equation and set your sights on some particular group of people, no telling where you'll end up. That couldn't happen here, I said. Lord will it and won't, Big John said. So that's a part of that story.
Very good.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm sure you've been on the book tour and signing, and what's been the reaction of the people that have come in to get their book signed, and what are they saying to you about having finished your book?
You know, it's varied. I mean, people that have come in have been very nice and complimentary for the most part, and you know, different things. I think the characters are something that my hope in the book, writing the book, was to write a book of substance with characters that become people who make you laugh, cry, and think. And I think the characters have stood out with people a good bit. You know, that's the thing about Lonesome Dove. Why it's my favorite book and movie. Like the Gus is the best greatest character I've ever read in any book, and it's and I thought Robert Duvall, like he played him perfectly.
And he even said it was his favorite character of all time. Not
Wow.
just that he acted it,
Did he really?
but the character itself. He said, when I read the script, he said, I was blown away because it was so real. And I think, and Gus, as we were talking before the show, they told it was going to be Robert Duvall and
Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones, but I pictured him in my mind. I said, "Well, they don't look anything like Gus and Woodrow." Then I saw him in costume, and I went, "That's Gus and Woodrow."
Yeah.
And they absolutely nailed the two characters perfectly.
They did.
Do you miss the characters? So you were talking about your daughter, saying you're talking to them all the time. But when you spend that much time with something that becomes real to you when you're writing it, and then it ends, is it like a loss to you?
Very much. I probably need to be. I was talking about my daughter need to be in therapy. Maybe about I probably do too about that, because it has been. It's like they become people, and they were parts of people that I know or knew. A lot of them.
You kind of revived.
Yeah, and so it's one reason I kept going on the book. I had a book scout with a Hollywood company. He'd read it 5 times early on, and this was after couple years and a few rewrites. It's ready, and. It's like, I didn't want to end it. And I kept working on it and rewriting it. I wanted to make it as good as I could. But part of it was I just kind of didn't want to leave them. So, yep.
Which I think is indicative of anything you're enjoying, whether it's a dinner out, a vacation. You go, let's stay a few more days, if you ever get the chance to do that, because you don't want the good times to end. And were you pleased with the ending? Are people going to be shocked with the ending, or do you think it's something that they will relish at the end?
I think it's they'll be surprised. I've definitely had some people say, "I didn't know you would, go that way with it." And anyway, there was some. I say it's a book about hope and hardship, and faith and doubt, and also redemption and revenge. And so, it's a lot of the South, a lot of the world too. But there's some revenge that comes through in there, and I was pleased. I left it opening for a sequel, which I've got a lot of notes and kind of working on. So we'll see where that goes.
And you mentioned people have read it, and is there any interest in possibly taking this to film?
Well, I've talked with this one. I haven't pursued that yet. I don't know. I kind of. Unless something comes at me. I've had some calls and talk with one person. I think he thinks it would be more of like a Netflix series than a book, because it's got a lot to it as far as the characters, and it's not just a plot-based, book. And so we'll see where that goes. I haven't been actively pursuing that yet.
Well, you think about all the shows based on the South that have been in movies and television over the years. Evening Shade with Burt Reynolds. The list goes on and on and on.
Yep.
And so they know that it's certainly a successful formula. Anything you write about the South, and congratulations on you, because your bestsellers list with USA Today and just every place else. So you got to be pleased with it. I guess the next step, though, is you say there's a possible sequel in it. Is that where you go next, or do you go to something else on your list?
I got asked this last week to be a panelist at the Mississippi Book Festival, which I'm just highly recommending. It's in Jackson, Mississippi. It's a great event, and so they want me to be the panelist for short story authors. And last year I was the author on it, and I was like, I was thinking about, some short stories. I like the short story side of things. She's like, well, maybe this is a sign. That's what you need to do. So I've got a short story collection in mind, as well as a sequel, and so I'm not 100% sure. This fall, though, we're going to crank up one of them.
And my wife just handed me this. Paperback's coming out soon.
Yes.
And also it's available at Novel and Amazon and every place else you buy books.
Square Books in Oxford, and pretty much all around.
Well, I think it's a great inaugural effort. Go to hell, Ole Miss. I can't argue with the title at all.
Thank you very much.
And in fact, I 2 years ago at the University of Texas, where I went to school, came to play Ole Miss. And I said, the two most egotistical schools I can think of are finally clashing, and who will be the most ostentatious and over the top? And it could be either Ole Miss or Texas. Texas is a lot bigger, but they got nothing on Ole Miss for putting on the big dog.
There you go. That's
great.
Great.
A great first effort, and it's a pleasure to have met you. And I'm sure we'll have you back because I see more things coming from you.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed being here.
Absolutely. Jeff Berry, everybody. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dawn Grader, President and CEO of Southern Security Federal Credit Union. We're the proud title sponsor of the Earle Farrell for Memphis show. Coming to you live from Lansky's in the world-famous Peabody Hotel and celebrating all of the great things about our great city, Memphis, Tennessee. Hi, I'm Dawn Grader, President and CEO of Southern Security Federal Credit Union. We're the proud title sponsor of the Earle Farrell for Memphis show. Coming to you live from Lansky's in the world-famous Peabody Hotel and celebrating all of the great things about our great city, Memphis, Tennessee.
Hi, I'm Glenda Hastings, owner of Napa Cafe, and I'm so proud to be part of the Earle Farrell for Memphis show, streaming live from Lansky's from the Peabody. We will be showcasing not only Napa Cafe, but some great restaurants around town. We look forward to seeing you.
Hi, everyone. It's Diane Kimbrough, Lady Di, your insurance PI. And I'm here to tell you about the new podcast that Earle Farrell for Memphis is doing. And we're doing it downtown live from the Peabody, which is behind me and next to the Rendezvous. And we're going to be talking all things Memphis, but we're also going to be talking about health insurance because that applies to everyone. And I can help you in every area. So I look forward for you listening to us and learning more about what we can do for you in Memphis and how I can help you with your health.
Hello, Memphis, Mid-South. And first, I'd like to thank you for visiting with Earle Farrell Memphis today, and we want to support him just like you do. I'm George Gully, one of the sales managers at Jim Carrey Chevrolet. We've been in business here in Memphis for over 75 years. I've been associated with the company for almost 25, and I'll help you find the right car, truck, or SUV here at not only our Chevy store, but also Buick, GMC, Nissan, Subaru. We can help you find that right car. Keep watching Earle and come see me. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Kathy Thurman Edwards, State Farm, and I'm so excited to be one of the sponsors for the Earle Farrell from Memphis show, broadcasting live from Lansky's at the Peabody. And I'll tell you all about what we've got going on at our office. Gift cards for quotes. No purchase necessary. I'm better looking than a lizard.
Hi, this is Randy Wright from the Dive Shop and Dive Ventures in Memphis. We've been in Memphis over 64 years teaching people to dive, snorkel, and swim. We'd love to have you come join us and have some fun. We're also a part of the Dive Ventures group with 18 locations across the country, stretched from Phoenix to Vienna, Virginia. Please give us a call. We'll be able to take care of you at 999 South Yates in Memphis, or call us at 901-763-DIVE.
Hi, I'm Brett Batterson, President and CEO of the Orpheum Theater Group in downtown Memphis. We are so pleased with our partnership with the Earle Farrell Show and very happy that he is broadcasting live from Lansky's at the historic Peabody Hotel. We're all here to make Memphis better.
Hi, my name is Jameson Todd, and I'm the director of Live at the Garden and the Radiance Amphitheater. And we're so excited for our 25th year of Live at the Garden here at the Memphis Botanic Garden. We've got a great lineup for you this season, so come on out.
Hi, I'm Olivia Wall, Director of Marketing and Communications for Memphis Botanic Garden and Live at the Garden. We've had Earle Farrell right along the way for the past 25 years, and we can't wait to talk more about the season this summer on the Earle Farrell for Memphis show.
So come out to Live at the Garden. Our first show is on June 21st.
Hey, my name is Jake. I'm with Phoenix Unequaled Home Entertainment. I just wanted to introduce myself and kind of what I do here at Phoenix. I'm a sales engineer. A lot of the times we talk about home theaters, but there's so much more that we offer. We offer a lot of home security solutions, as well as water detection and everything. So if you guys ever need anything, give us a call. We'll get you guys fixed up.
And welcome back. Joining me now is Glenda Hastings, owner of Napa Cafe. Almost 26 years, the owner of Napa Cafe.
Yeah, well, actually, almost 25 years. I saw that post. Yeah, so
Well,
so next year will start my 25th year, I believe. But 27 years in business altogether, Napa has been open. So.
And maybe that's what they were referring to, because I Googled you and it said how long has she owned it, and it said almost 26 years.
Okay.
So that's the length, I guess, of Napa, was when they wrote this. But and they say in any business, 5 years is really a huge mile marker if you can make it in any business 5 years. So the fact that you're still there and almost 24, 25, any of those numbers it's a tribute to you and your team that you put together. And as we've discussed many times, that's as important as anything else. If you didn't have the right team, you wouldn't still be there.
And it's a constantly evolving team. You know, I have a lot of people that have been with me for a long time, and then, you know, people come, people go, you know.
This is like this guy that used to be with Gallo Wine, and he was an actor, but he had some Italian name, and he had a big mustache and wore a fedora. And I said, so how long have you been doing this? He goes, a couple of years. You know, other people do this before me, but they come and they go. And that's true of everything, which is really the toughest thing about any business, though, because in a way you're there with this group of people that you work very closely with, but really you're always alone because you never know who's the next person to get married, move away, you know, things change, and so you have people you get close to, and then they change. So it is a constantly evolving thing. But the one constant throughout all of it has been you.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And the growth that's been there with me, even though I am the constant, I will definitely say that I haven't been the constant as far as like how I approach the business, how I conduct myself, and all the lessons that I've learned and how I apply that every day. That's been the most amazing part of it, and I think for anybody in business, when people talk about not being stagnant, I think that really starts with yourself and making sure that you are approaching yourself and how you're looking at your business. It starts with you.
Right after you first took over, you went out to California, Napa Valley, coincidentally enough, and what did you see there? Because had you ever been out there before?
I hadn't, and actually, when I took that trip, I knew that I had to take a visit to Napa Valley to own a restaurant called Napa Cafe.
Yes.
I thought that there's no way that I can have a business that's named after an area of the country, and such an important area of the country when it came to food and wine. That was, you know, just it's a destination for people. And I didn't have any money to get out there. And what was so funny is the wine distributors, they knew that I bought it. By this time, I could tell people. And it was only a very short period of time before I actually owned the restaurant. I could let them know.
So it was all really on the QT.
Oh, yes. I don't even know what QT means, but...
The quiet.
Oh, the quiet. Okay, yes, exactly, the QT. So yes, it definitely was. But what was so funny is that I wanted to get out there, and... they said, just get a plane ticket and we'll take care of the rest.
Wow.
So all the distributors got together. I don't know if they coordinated with each other. I can't remember. I bought a plane ticket, and out to Napa Valley I went, and I stayed at the most gorgeous chateaus. I stayed in the vineyards in beautiful, like, private homes, and was... you know, catered to the entire time that I was there, wine and dined me. I really didn't even have to have a penny out there. They took care of breakfast was always served to me wherever I was staying. And then they took me to lunches and dinners and gave me the entire tour of the area in such an upscale way, because the wineries that can do that, they have the money, and boy, oh boy, they sure know how to do it right. It is impressive.
I remember the movie Sideways about Pinot Noir, that they sold out, the entire country sold out of Pinot Noir because of that movie. But it was them two guys wanted to take one last trip through the wine country and do all the tastings, everything. Did you ever see the movie?
I never saw the movie. I'm kind of funny about seeing shows and movies that have to do with the
Your
business.
business.
I don't know why. I think because sometimes when I'm away from the business, I kind of like to do the other things
Sure.
that have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But maybe I should watch it sometime. I know that people stopped drinking Merlot after that movie, if I'm not
Well,
mistaken.
they're back. They're back now.
Oh, they're back now. Yeah, yeah.
But when you go out there and you, with your limited restaurant experience, and you see this, which is pretty much the benchmark for great things in hospitality, because they got the money, they got the background, and they're trying to showcase restaurateurs from all over the world. So you go there and see that. Did it make you realize you were on the right track, that you needed to adapt to some of that, or do you feel like that Napa Cafe Memphis had its own personality, and it was different from California, but nonetheless just as good?
You know, it's interesting that you should even ask that question, because when I went out there, I had no expectations of I was going to go get ideas, and none of that was on my mind. I was so kind of buried in the deal, buried in the fact that I was about to own a restaurant, that when I got out there, it was like kind of how I was for the longest time, kind of running it by the skin of my teeth, you know, just doing it and being there and absorbing it, never really actually analyzing what I was taking in. It wouldn't be until about another 6 months that I realized what a profound trip that was. And I knew it was going to be. I knew that it was profound that I went there because I knew that I needed to have been there in order to have a restaurant named after the area. That to me was what was most important. And I remember thinking 6 months into it that, oh my gosh, I totally got it. And I had integrated so much of that into the restaurant without realizing that I had done it. And one of the things I will never forget, there was a restaurant that was there, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. It'll come to me in a minute. Actually, it may have been called Pinot. But they had it was a gorgeous restaurant, and it had the most beautiful plants outside, these big, huge clay pots. And I remember thinking that I wanted that so much at the restaurant. And I remember seeing how much they were at the time. I was like, well, I won't do that, but I'm going to have that one day. And I do. I have them in the restaurant. I do.
And outside.
Yes, I have them everywhere. But I remember that being the first kind of visual of the aesthetic of Napa Valley, were these beautiful plants outside, these big clay pots, lots of wood, stucco, that seemed to be in a lot of places, but the aesthetic part. The other thing that stood out to me when I was there that I loved was there's restaurants. It was so neat because in Memphis, Tennessee, when you went to a fine dining restaurant in 1998, 1999, 2000, whenever, you got dressed up. Mm-hmm. And the ladies were wearing dresses, dressed to the nine. The men had on at least coats, maybe coats and ties. Right. You made reservations, and the dining experience that you were going to have, you looked a certain way. And I remember being in a really, really nice restaurant, drinking like the best wine, the best caliber of food, the most incredible service. And there's a man sitting next to me, and he's wearing blue jeans and cowboy boots. And one of the things that was so neat, and I mentioned this to one of the people that was probably an owner of a winery, I just said, I love this, that people come to dinner and they have the most grand experiences wearing whatever they want. And he looks at me and he says, you have to remember something. He says, I know that, wine is expensive, and especially Napa Valley, and it's kind of has this certain look. He says, but at the end of the day, these proprietors of winemakers are farmers.
Yeah.
And I love that, and I thought that was just so neat. And I remember that I wanted to have that at the restaurant, that I wanted to be like incredible fine dining, like the points of service that make fine dining, the presentations, the way you feel when you go into a fine dining restaurant. I wanted those qualities, but I wanted people to feel like they could be wearing khaki shorts, tennis shoes, whatever they wanted. And I have that to this day. I didn't say that. I didn't say it to everyone, but I know what ended up happening and how that came about, and that's just from reflection. And that was how you make people feel it can be a clothing store, it could be any business, especially in a restaurant. If people feel warm and welcomed into the establishment, there's just something about that people don't feel like they have to look a certain way or be a certain way to be welcomed. And I think that's what made all the difference in the world. And having that experience in Napa Valley, being in a restaurant, knowing that it doesn't matter, where you come from, it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter what you're dressed like, that being welcomed into a restaurant is the most important thing.
Well, and as I've told you before, going to Napa Cafe, the minute you walk in the door, everybody there welcomed you and said, "Hey, how you doing? Come on in." It's not like, "Hi, welcome to Walgreens." It's a sincere welcome, and they all do it. And every time I've ever been in there, that's what you get. It's almost like the Rendezvous. You go to the Rendezvous, and every person from the front door all the way to the back says, "Hey, welcome to the Rendezvous. Good to see you again." And I think that is a trait that you have created there, and it's something that is part of your personality. And they see how you treat people, and it does go down to the entire staff. That they see how you treat people, and they realize that that's how I have to treat them too, because you'll let them know if they don't.
Yes, when I'm interviewing front of the house employees, I tell them, I said, listen, it's going to take me a while for you to kind of learn all the different things and how I want them. I said, but the biggest thing you can do is mimic me. And that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have to feel sincere. I think with any business, being authentic, being sincere, you can't fake. If you're not faking it, it's just going to be natural, and it's going to become a natural part and extension of the business.
But you've been able to continue to grow, and you go in there, and I look around, and it's such a beautiful restaurant. And I know I love what you told George Falls when you told him, he said, "Why do you think you should buy the restaurant? Why do we think you should sell it to you?" He said, "Because I can do a better job at it than you guys are doing." And I would have thought somebody would get really mad at me for that. But you were absolutely sincere. You just saw your vision for the restaurant was in your head. And I think George saw that and said, she has a passion for it. She has the intelligence for it. And I said, let's figure out a way to make this happen and give her this opportunity. So I think he was very benevolent. And I think that he did that because of you.
100%, absolutely. And I'll never forget when he said that. He kind of shook his head when I said, "I think I can do it better than what y'all are doing." He said, he shook his head. I'll never forget. And he says, "I think you can too," and he believed that.
Yeah.
And, because opening up a restaurant and doing all the things that it requires to build it out, hiring a team, doing all of that is a grand affair.
Yes.
It is not for the weary.
I've done it a number of times.
I know you have.
It's exciting, but at the same time, it really does take on a life of its own. I remember we were hiring the staff for Sleep Out Louie's when we opened downtown, just down the street. And we had hired all the servers we were going to hire, and this 6-foot woman came walking in, and my assistant manager goes, "Well, too bad we hired our last employee just a minute ago." And I said, "We're going to hire one more." Because you just get a feeling about people. You just think of this. The minute she walked in the room, I said, "This is the kind of person that draws people to a restaurant." And it really is. You can only be in one place in that restaurant at a time. Your people are all over the place. And so when you get around somebody who's got a dynamic personality, that's who you're looking for.
For sure. That's a constant thing that I'm scanning, and I forget to do it sometimes. And when I'm talking about scanning, I'm scanning my employees, who am I surrounded with. And I say that now because I've realized that something we need to do more often is scanning who is in our corner, who we're around, because they are everything. And sometimes people can start working with you, and they can be, if they're dynamic and they're amazing, you better make sure they're dynamic and amazing in your corner, not out for their own agenda. And I think that's probably been the biggest lesson, and it continues to be one for me, is that not everybody has your best interest in mind, and it is mind-blowing. And they can be right to your face. They can be just magnificent and amazing, and you have no idea they're like burning down the place behind your back, you know.
In fact, I'm the same way as you, because I think everybody's going, why wouldn't they like me?
Right. I know. Especially when you're giving them everything, you're giving nothing but goodness to them, you think you're going to receive that back, and that's just not at all how it is sometimes.
In fact, the bookkeeper at Sleep Out went to my partners and said she could run the place better than me, and they should fire me and hire her to be the general manager. So they called me and said, you have a problem. And then they said, what do you think you should do? I said, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going over there right now, telling her to get her stuff, and she has to leave. And years later, she came back to me and said, you were right. I was wrong. I said, yeah, but you know, you can't let somebody stay in your organization like that, because she was plotting against me, just like you were saying. And it hurts your feelings, but you shouldn't take it personally. They're just they think they're doing what they should do to try to get ahead. And if that means stomping on you and stabbing you in the back, that's what it's going to take.
You're lucky that someone told you. I mean, that really, there's a lot that goes on behind people's backs, and they don't know. And I mean, you can't stay in that energy of worrying about that. If not, you'll never make any moves. You never buy a business. You never will leave your front door.
But you do have to be ruthless, so everybody else gets the message. You do this to me, that's what I will do to you.
Yeah.
And just keep on going. You have to have a lot of young people, maybe even your own employees, come to you and say, I'd like to own my own restaurant one day. But just like buying a home, this is the most difficult time for young people to buy a home in the history of this country. That's how tight the housing market is right now. And I would have to assume buying a restaurant is just as difficult to do one now. But when young people, they say, what should I do in this world? I love the restaurant business. And so, is there a path to follow?
I don't hear that often ever.
Really?
I do not.
Does that amaze you?
It does. I mean, I guess it does and it doesn't. I never once thought about it until the moment I thought of it, right? And it was not even on my agenda of things to do in life. And there are people, I know there are kind of what I call regular people that never worked in the business that dream of owning a restaurant, and I quickly talk them out of it.
Yeah, I did too. Here's what I tell them. I said, have you got the money you're thinking about investing? And they go, yeah. I said, have you got the plan? Yeah. I said, here's what you do. You let me kick you in the butt as hard as I can. You give me all the money, and at least you have a friend that's got some money and take you out to dinner. Because you feel like your butt has been kicked if you get into it and you're not really prepared, or even if you are prepared. It's a very difficult thing to do. But it is, in fact, Jeff Sanford, I don't know if you knew Jeff. He's passed now. He was on the city council and had a great sense of humor. And he went to a guy named Bernard Chang, who used to own the China Wall in a restaurant over in the square. Sadly, he was stabbed to death by his dishwasher.
Oh, my. Oh, goodness.
Another story. But Jeff came to Bernard and said, Bernard, I've got an idea for a restaurant. Can I sit down with you? And they were good friends. And so Bernard sat there and listened to him patiently. And so he gets through and he goes, okay, Jeff, all very good. I only have one question. He goes, man, that's great. I came up with my whole plan. He's only got one issue of the whole thing. He goes, so what is it, Bernard? What do I need to change? He goes, you don't know a damn thing about restaurant business, which was true. I mean, but I think so many people think all you got to do is be able to cook. They like people. You buy the wine, you buy the food, you cook it, hire people to do it, and you just say hi to everybody.
Yes, I mean there are people that have all those ingredients, the money, the build, everything can be actually fantastic, everything about it. But it is truly the dynamic of the people that are working in the restaurant. Who's leading them? How are they being led? You know, if there's a bad apple in the bunch, making sure that you figure that out. Because if they're not on your team and they're to support you and to uplift you, then you're going to have problems.
Yeah. And then the other part is the theft, which I had no idea that was as big a problem as it is in the industry, and it's industry-wide. But it's because everything in a restaurant is usable by those who work there, who come to visit you, customers, everybody. And so you have to be constantly aware of it and stop all the holes in the system.
I do two things with that because I guess, people say, well, theft is inevitable. It's going to happen. And I remember Fred Smith at one point. I remember he used to come to the restaurant a lot, and I saw that you posted about him the other day. And he's such a big person that everybody's talking about now, which he deserves that. He's done so much great for this city, that past, present, and future.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever be able to quantify it or qualify it. Such a big presence. But one of the things he told me is that, in the beginning he knew that there was going to be a percentage of loss. And I just I would never have been, I'm not cut out for that. Like, one of the things that's so great for my business and why I kind of get it right is because I'm constantly trying to get it 100%. And, even getting one bad review out of 200, I'm like, oh, I can't deal with it. Like, it really, I'm like, put situations and systems in place. If someone has one bad thing that went wrong, what can I do to prevent that? And I remember him telling me that, and he said, he says, either I have to get over that loss. I don't remember what the percent was. And I remember doing the math in my head, thinking about how many packages he had and how many hundreds of thousands of packages that was. And he said, either that or I don't have a business. And it made, it's one way or the other, you're going to have to accept that that's going to happen, loss is going to happen. But one of the things I've done with the restaurant, it still doesn't make it perfect, are two things, is that we count just about everything every day in the restaurant. We know if there's a lime that we're short on. We know, from the filet mignon to the number of limes, et cetera, et cetera. And I always make sure that everybody knows when I know that we're missing one thing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like keeping honest people honest. If they know that we're counting, they know that we'll know if it's missing. Something will happen within that person, hopefully, to keep them honest. And the second thing is I talk about it out loud. I talk about theft. I talk about letting the employees know if there's something they want to buy from me, I'll be happy to, if I can, to sell it to them at my cost. I will be happy to give them something if they want it. They just ask, or if they need to borrow something, just ask me. Let me be part of the conversation. Don't just take it out the door.
I always knew something was up when I'd have an employee come and go, Mr. Earle, can I see you privately for a moment? Here comes the hit. And it was always, can you loan me some money? Which, it's a cash and carry kind of business for the servers and all. The cooks who get paid on a regular basis. But the servers, they usually leave with money after each shift. And then a lot of it, depending on the restaurant. But everybody, especially when you're kind of living like that, you have one thing go wrong with your car, you don't have the funds to fix it, because restaurant people pretty much spend the money every night after they get off. And
well, it's interesting you even bring that up about the car. I've always loved giving to people. Like, it's been a natural part of me, even as when I was in a high school and we would be out and about around town. Every Saturday night, just about, I would end up at Tomley Park with a bunch of I since turned them from Happy Meals to bigger sandwiches, because Happy Meals really wasn't that much food, and handing out sacks of food to people. It was just a natural part of who I was. I love giving food to people, but talking about employees not having money and how I use the restaurant, not that you really asked that, but it kind of triggered something. One of the things with my business that I've done over the years, it's been a natural part of my business, is using my business to help other people. And it originally started with one employee. I'd always done donations for organizations if they were having a silent auction. That was a natural thing. Dinner for two, I gave those away all the time. But when it came to cash, that wasn't really something I had a lot of and to give away. But one of the things that I knew was that the money when I had this conversation with the employee, he had 2 flat tires. He didn't come to work one day. And the next day he called me and said, I don't think I can come to work. I'm missing my other job as well. And he said, I don't just have 1 flat tire, I have 2. And he didn't have the money to repair those tires, to get new tires. And I said, I tell you what, I said, I'm going to pay for those tires and I'll get that taken care of for you. And I got it taken care of. He came in to my office and he said, I can't believe that because it was a significant amount of money. It was like $700-800, I think, because they were big. Tires. They were it was truck tires. And I said, well, you know what? I said, I really don't have extra money, but the money comes in, it stays in my bank account for a few minutes, and then out the door it goes. I said, so I'm happy to help out. And he said, well, I'll pay you back, every penny on my first check that, the next check. And I said, no, that won't work. I said, you're going to need your money to do that.
Live.
And I said, I'm just going to take out $5. I think I took out $5 for his paycheck for the next year and a half. And we do the math on it, whatever that was. It was a long time because I knew that he couldn't miss that money. And I love that able to do that and using the business to help employees, because he was an employee, as you can imagine, forever. I didn't do it for that reason. But also, it also made me realize how important a job is for people and that income is.
You also are very kind and generous to your customers. I was in your restaurant not long ago, and you were pulling this painting that had hung in the restaurant. And it was a favorite painting of a couple who was having an anniversary. And you said, we're going to give them this tonight. They're coming in for their anniversary. And I said, I just thought to myself, how thoughtful of you to have known that that was their favorite painting, that you had taken it down as you redecorate, and as restaurants do over the years, but you didn't get rid of it. And then it occurred to you that it was still there, and this is their anniversary. Let's give them that painting. What was their reaction when you did that?
Oh, my goodness. I don't think I really knew that it was going to be quite that exceptional. But what was kind of neat about it when I did it, there was another table in the restaurant at the same time, and that was Mrs. Herndon. Her husband, Dr. and Mrs. Herndon, ate at the restaurant for 18, 19 years before he passed away. She still dines there. But their favorite table was called the strawberry table. It's table 14. It was where the strawberry painting hung. Do you know, it was so funny? I'll never forget somebody telling me they want the strawberry table. And I'm like, what are you talking about, the strawberry table? I mean, I never looked at the walls. I was always looking down at the tables, right? And so the guests named it the strawberry table. And it was a popular table for guests. And so Mrs. Herndon was in the restaurant that night when I gave the strawberry painting away to the couple. So it was their first date, was at table 14, was the strawberry table, and that's where they love to dine. But to have another guest to be at the same time 2 tables over dining, because she got the biggest kick out of it. The guest that I gave it to, the wife cried. She didn't know. He did. Because, art is something so personal to people. Yeah. I made the call to the man, and I said, hey, I want to gift you this painting, but I want to make sure it's something that you want. I don't want to feel like you have to have it. He goes, no, we will love it. And she cried. I remember they wrote me a note, and he was so thrilled. He said, my wife cried again on the way home. It was so special and such a spontaneous surprise and so meaningful for them. And, I love doing that. I give up things all the time that maybe I really do like, but if I know for somebody else it's going to be that much more meaningful for them, I'm happy to give that up. I love it.
Well, and you do, and you treat your employees great and your customers, and that's why you've been around for as long as you have and as successful as you are. I want to kind of go back we're running out of time today, so I want to go back into some of the details of the transaction. But I did want people that haven't been to Napa Cafe to realize what you've accomplished, but also the kind of person you are. This didn't just happen. I mean, you've done a lot of things exactly right. You've made mistakes, I'm sure, and you know exactly what those mistakes were, because that's part of the process, is getting past a mistake and never doing it again, putting policies in place, and that's all the things you've done. But I do think that whole way it came about, in our next visit, we will kind of go into that a little bit, because I think that was an incredible event in your life, and it's still evolving and will for the rest of your life. But the fact that you were so young and you were so determined, I think it's just an incredible story. So when you come back, we'll go into that a little bit more. But I did want to also talk about what you do at Thanksgiving, because I remember this year I said, are you all booked up for Thanksgiving? And you go, well, let me tell you what we do. So as a final story today, tell them what you do at Thanksgiving.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a secret to a lot of people now, but in 2014, I was renovating the restaurant and the aesthetics of the restaurant, leveled everything, all the dining rooms, and was renovating it. And one of the things that I knew behind the scenes and people didn't know about was that I was renovating the restaurant, but behind the scenes, I was also renovating my life. And at the time, I was, I don't think I made it doesn't sound like this profound right this moment, but I decided to kind of get rid of everything that was no longer serving me and the best and highest good, because I discovered that there was people in my corner that didn't want the best for me. And it made me take inventory of my entire life by learning this. And I remember thinking like, oh, I need to fix this. Oh, I need to fix this. Oh, I need to fix this. And the next thing I know, I realized 360 degrees of my life was not what I thought it was. And it was overwhelming. I remember thinking, how do I get out of this? This is insurmountable. This is, what am I going to do? This is insane. Like, how did I get here? Because I am mindful of my life, but the business was such everything in my life, everything surrounding my life had to do with Napa Cafe. And I kind of just assumed that other things were in place, and they were in place, but not how I wanted them to be in place. And so in 2014, while I was renovating the restaurant, behind the scenes, no one knew this. I was renovating my personal life by getting rid of everything that no longer served me. I know I said that already, but I wanted to say it again because it was that huge. And I did it with no one knowing it. I said nothing to not a soul. Not one person did I confide in no one. And I did it. It was a very lonely process. I didn't take everything all at once. I did it in steps. And as I did it, I found myself by myself on Thanksgiving Day. I had one place to go that day. When I came home, it was 3 o'clock. I'll never forget, I saw the clock on the oven. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have nothing else to do today. That's what this feels like. I felt very much like, oh my gosh, this is what happens when you get rid of people and situations. You kind of end up in a spot where you're by yourself. And I was. And I suddenly was kind of feeling a little sorry for myself, and I was especially missing my mom. She had passed away in 2006, and my favorite meal that she cooked for me was Thanksgiving. I loved it so much. She had to cook the exact same thing on Christmas. I mean, I took inventory of everything that she cooked, and this is a typical Southern Thanksgiving spread. And I was missing her especially, and I was feeling a little sorry for myself. And it lasted all of about 3 minutes. How do I know that? Because by the time I was feeling sorry for myself and missing my mom, feeling sorry for myself, I thought, you know what? My Thanksgiving can look any way that I want. Like, what am I doing? Like, I can make my Thanksgiving be anything that I want. And what do I want? I want my mother's food on Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And I had just renovated the restaurant, and I thought, you know what? The next year, I'm going to open up Thanksgiving. We're going to prepare all of my mother's recipes, and I'm going to feed anyone that wants a free Thanksgiving meal to come to Napa. And that was going to be my Thanksgiving forever. And I got a vision for it. Within that 3 o'clock that I saw the time on the stove to 3:03, all of those things happened in 3 minutes.
Wow.
And the next year, that whole story is it's the story itself is worth the whole show of how Donna's Table came about. Donna was my mother, and the name of that day is called Donna's Table. And it's a Thanksgiving feast. There's a whole roasted turkey on every single table in the restaurant. Each table is decorated with fresh flowers, candlelight, everything you can imagine. And it's just glorious. It's my favorite day of the year.
Well, what a great story. Because
it all came about, though. It didn't come out from me sitting there going, oh, let me do something great for the community on Thanksgiving.
Just to help you.
It came from something from me. And that's how things are sustainable. When something is from the inside of you, an idea that you have, when you're inspired from yourself, it doesn't matter what it is that you want to do. You'll do whatever it takes. Because the same thing with the restaurant. That was just, lots of people open a restaurant. Lots of people have the money to do that and the knowledge to do that. But that was from the inside of me. And I took and still do to this day, I do whatever it takes to keep it going.
Well, I love that. I love all the things you do, and continued success. We'll have you back again to pick up a story, but I think today was Very enlightening about who you are. And I think that's a big part of what Napa Cafe is, and we thank you for it.
Thank you for letting me go on that rant.
No, it wasn't. It was very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is our show for today. We'll have Glenda back, because I know every time I have her on, everybody goes, when are you having her back? So it will not be long before we get to share some more of her great stories. Thank you, Glenda.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.